Hello, hello, Grizzlies. Buenas tardes. How is everyone doing? Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can see me. Clap 3 times if you love AAPI NH Heritage Month. I'm Dr. Flo. Thank you all for being here at our last but not least Kindred Spirits in celebration and in recognition of Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian Heritage Month. Before I introduce our distinguished speaker, I did want to make some note. These are beautiful Unity stoles that are available. Yes, they're beautiful. Clap for our Unity stoles. So if you are faculty or staff and would like to wear this at graduation or just have it as memorabilia in your office, they are $50. And before you're like, what, seriously, you're gonna take this money and go on vacation? No, I'm not. All the proceeds will go to the Inclusive Excellence Fund, which then is used to put on more DEIB events. So it goes back to our faculty, back to our staff, and back to our student groups. So $50. But if you're a senior or a graduating student and you want one, these are for free. I don't have any here. They are in the Office of Inclusive Excellence in Richardson 2-131. So come during that time or during the workday and we will provide those for you. Next, we are launching, thanks to our amazing keynote speaker, the Inclusive Excellence Book Club. And so with our book club, we are launching this month, our Heritage Month. And so our book club discussion will be on May 20th in Porter Hall 319. 319, thanks to our STEM Center folks. So we will be there doing our book club discussion. So before you're like, well, Flo, what book are we reading? The books are in the back right now. I have Josh, our administrative assistant, holding it, being a bodyguard. The books are available after the keynote session because I know how you are and you're going to grab it, grab your food, and then leave. Just kidding. That's me making a joke, so don't take it serious. But they are available afterwards. We do have limited supply, so if you know you're like me and are not going to read, because I don't read, don't get the book, because it might gather dust and be there in your shelf. But if you're going to read and participate in the upcoming book discussion, then I highly encourage you to grab it. So Josh will not bend. He will not, even if you're bat your cute eyes, he's not going to hand them to you, okay? Till after the event. On that note, I did want to also note that this Friday at 1 p.m. in the high rise, we're having our Pacific Islander barbecue event. This was spearheaded, led, and coordinated by our Polynesian students. So kudos to our Polynesian students. So there you go. I've given you a lot of information, but now, Adams State, without further ado, please help me welcome my amazing colleague, friend, and our distinguished keynote speaker, Nico Centeno, who will talk about understanding the AAPI identity in an underrepresented area, what and where we can do better. So Adams State Grizzlies, help me welcome Nico Centeno.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I know it's nearing the end of the semester, and we're all very busy and in crunch time, so I really appreciate that you all found the time to come and speak. I also just want to make it clear, I'm wearing my Stop AAPI hoodie to support a charity that does research on AAPI discrimination and hate crimes. It wasn't a personal choice to not dress up. I'm supporting. I'm gonna start off with maybe like a little Kahoot. It's an off-brand Kahoot, but a Kahoot maybe to get us started. So if you all could pull out your phones, I'll have a QR code if you'd like to. It's a quick one. I have the QR code there, and it's at ahaslides.com, because Kahoot told me I needed to pay money, and I wasn't going to do that. Oh, shoot. If I go away from the present. Yeah. If you've all got it, will you raise your hands just to let me know so I can switch screens? Okay, good. I'm going to switch it over then. We're going to switch over here. Oh, perfect. All righty. 21 players, 22 players, and it has the little code there at the top too. All righty. And then, perfect. So the question is, in the past 6 months, the use of anti-Asian slurs in online spaces has increased how much? And this is I'm gonna close this out. Alrighty. So it's increased by 66%. And I really wanted, this was an important statistic to me, I really wanted to illustrate the people in these online spaces are our students and our staff. And it's in those spaces that they're in that they will be seeing this increase. Okay, go Vince. Number 1. And then I have number 2. What is the percentage of Asian adults who personally know an Asian person who has been threatened or attacked since COVID-19? And this is, and I mean threatened in threatening their life. Not just slurs, not just comments, in threatening their life or physically attacked. All right, it's 32%. So that's about a third of all Asians, in America, which is really sad. Okay. Ooh, Becky. Good, someone from our office. Asian American students, this is a true or false. Asian American students are the least likely of any racial group to receive mental health support, according to the Journal of Adolescent Health. And it's true. In high schools and in universities, Asian Americans are the least likely to receive mental health support, counseling support of any racial group. Ooh, Becky. In 2022, one in how many Americans believed Asian Americans were responsible for COVID-19? This was a survey done by the Status Index in 2022. And it's a shocking 1 in 5. 1 in 5 Americans felt that in some way it was Asian Americans who were responsible for COVID-19, even though we know that that's not true. Oh, Becky, she got beat by Greg. And this last question is a little more close to home. The Colorado internment camp, which Japanese families were sent to after the executive order during World War II. What was the name of that camp? It's in Colorado. That affected people here in the Valley, people in Colorado, and led to a lot of Asian hate in the Valley. Do we know what that camp was called? Because it, I don't know. Oh, nice. I did not expect a lot of people to get the answer right. Because a lot of people don't really know Asian American history. And in fact, 42% of Americans could not give or could not name an historical Asian American event of significance. Because Asian American history, Asian American discrimination really just isn't talked about, it isn't taught, it isn't in our conversations. So let's see who the winner is. Juana. You know your Asian American data and history. Alrighty. I'm gonna go back to slideshow. Thank you so much for putting up with me doing that. I really appreciate that. Just to get the ball rolling. And it was very important for me to come and speak, and I think I emailed Dr. Flo about doing this my first month of starting here back in August, because it was very important for me to discuss on this topic. And when I try and advocate for AAPI events, one of the most common thing I hear is, do we really have a big Asian American community and Pacific Islander community on campus? And what really strikes me about that question is we're a small community, but that does not mean we are undeserving of recognition and celebration and understanding. Even if there were one of us, we still deserve that. We still deserve to be talked about. And I've seen discrimination in the community. I've seen discrimination here at Adams State. And while I feel people may not want to know more about it or talk about it, doesn't really matter, because I wanted to come speak because it's important to me, while everybody might not want to hear it. So how many of you might have noticed anti-Asian or Pacific Islander rhetoric on campus just within the past 5 years, when there was really a huge spike after COVID? It spiked, it kind of stagnated, and now it's rising again. I don't see a lot of hands up, which is surprising to me, because I've seen it and I've heard it, and I guarantee you that your Asian students, your Pacific Islander students, your coworkers, faculty, they've heard it too, even though you might not have. And so I wanted to get off with three sort of the biggest issues right now where lack of understanding is. So one is peak and increased AAPI discrimination since 2020. In 2020, we saw a huge spike in hate crimes, in slurs, both physically and in online spaces, and it didn't go back down to where it was. It stayed up, and it's peaking again. And we've found, actually, nearly 1 in 3 Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders have experienced discrimination since 2020, ranging from verbal to physical attacks. And the biggest 3 areas where they experienced that discrimination was business, healthcare, and education. So we're number 3. An increased AAPI hate, both online and physically, coincides with concerns about COVID-19, anti-Chinese rhetoric out of the government, and discussions about affirmative action visas. That was a very big discussion a couple months ago that was targeting a lot of Southeast Asian students, especially in STEM. And what the data has also really shown is that when we see rhetoric coming out of the government, we see the government calling Chinese people peasants. When we see that issue that, Asian students, Indian students, they're stealing our jobs. They're on the visas to take STEM jobs. That coincides with an increase in discrimination towards Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, both online and in person. Secondly, Asian American and Pacific Islander discrimination and racism taken less seriously. And so there is an emerging study by the organization Stop AAPI Hate, which is showing that an outpour from AAPI communities suggests that AAPI discrimination is taken so much less seriously than other forms of discrimination. They found that when students were reporting discrimination, even if it's not necessarily to a Title IX office or to a counselor office, but to professors, to classmates, they were found to be taken less seriously. It was considered less of a matter that needed escalation to administration. And this stems from a frequent issue of the model minority myth and this idea that Asian Americans have the good discrimination. We have the good discrimination. We're lucky because we're thought to be so smart. We're thought to be doctors and lawyers and all the wonderful careers. And we're the model minority, which was manufactured, by the way, to keep and oppress other races. That was manufactured and instituted by the US government back in the 20th century. But what it also found was that a lot of people, the majority of Americans, assumed that Asian Americans were in a higher economic class than they actually were doing better academically than they actually were, had better career prospects than they actually did. And that creates this unconscious idea and bias and kind of process in our thinking when we hear discrimination happening, when we see this, when we have Asian students, Asian coworkers, Asian people and Pacific Islanders that saying, this was an act of discrimination that happened, we have this little voice in our head that says, but Asians are doing so well in America, right? And that's stopping people from taking discrimination and racism seriously, from taking incidents seriously, from getting students help they need. And number 3, lack of adequate support for AAPI students and staff. So like I said, Asian American students and it just is a very profound statistic, Asian American students are the least likely of any racial group to have mental health services. And that's despite rising discrimination, that is despite rising hate crimes, that is despite the rise in Asian slurs in online spaces. And again, that leads back to sort of the model minority myth, a bit of Asian culture, and a chronic overestimation of AAPI well-being. And I'll go into some more statistics that point into this. And when it comes very specifically to the Valley and of Adams State, your AAPI peoples at ASU are faced with the traditional barriers and obstacles. They're still having everything that the other Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are facing, increased discrimination, increased slurs, etc. But it's heightened by an increase of AAPI discrimination, barriers to mental health support, combined with a lack of AAPI community and representation, because we don't have the biggest community here. And when you're suffering about your identity, you don't have that many people to go and say, you understand it too. You know what I'm going. You see me. And that is hard. That creates a mental struggle. That's incredibly hard to deal with on top of the other issues that you're already dealing with. And I'll go into this further, but there's a history, a deep, long history since World War II and kind of before of anti-Asian racism in the Valley. When I went to school here, and I'll tell a very personal story, when I went to school here, my American government teacher was talking about World War II, and he asked me, "Are you a Jap?" And when I explained that I was Korean, he said, "It's the same thing. You all do the same thing." He told people that if they ever ran over their pets, they should call me because Asians eat other people's pets. They said that Koreans were not to be trusted like all other Asians. And my classmates never spoke out about that. I had to fight with administration to be taken seriously. And I remember hearing, well, it's just not that bad. But it is. It is racism, it is discrimination, it is attacks. And I didn't have an Asian community really to turn to at that time. So I've also kind of compiled things that Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders want to see on their university from their professors, from administration, from people in an educational setting. And number one is more understanding and support for AAPI students and to be proactive in support. A really interesting, it was collected from Asian American students, a volunteered response. But they said that when professors, when their teachers were making warnings, we're going to talk about a sensitive racial issue, they very rarely did so. They were less likely to do so when it came to sensitive Asian American issues. They felt that their teachers, their classmates did not take issues of anti-Asian racism seriously. And that's what I've heard also from the Valley when there was things, during COVID, how it was the Chinese virus, Kung flu. That isn't just a joke. That was against a specific racial group that they felt wasn't taken seriously by members of their community. Number two, and this will be a very interesting one to talk about these statistics, don't assume AAPI students don't need help and appreciate AAPI achievements. So, I have my sources at the very end if you'd like to look at the studies and areas that I pulled from. But it was found that teachers and professors, these are in educational settings, were less likely to call on Asian American students that had their hand raised because the teachers assumed they already knew the answer. They were less likely to ask Asian American students, do you need help? Do you understand the assignment? Did you understand the homework? Was there anything you didn't understand? They were less likely to ask that to their Asian American students because they assumed they already knew the answer. They already knew what they were doing. And they were also less likely to appreciate AAPI achievements. So when Asian American students were getting into colleges, pursuing graduate school, going into a career, Asian American students were less likely to be congratulated than other racial groups who had accomplished very similar achievements. And that really comes from the model minority myth, you're doing so well. Why do I need to worry about you? Number three, take AAPI discrimination, racism, and anti-AAPI attitudes seriously. And that again, the number one thing Asian American students are saying is, my professors, my teachers, my classmates, administration, they don't take discrimination, racism, slurs used against me incidents, they don't take it as seriously. And number four, career path and continuing education support counseling. This is another really interesting statistic that Asian American students, and this isn't just obviously at Adams State, this is across universities nationwide, but we're less likely to be recommended by teachers to go to career counseling, to be advised on, hey, what are you planning for grad school? What are you planning for law school? What are you planning for college? Because they assumed that they already had it figured out. And that dive down to the really deep issue. We assume that Asians already have it all figured out. We assume that because they're doing well academically, because of the model minority myth, because of the overestimations of economic and academic well-being, we assume we already have it figured out. And so we put Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders kind of in the back of our minds, right? They're doing so well, we don't need to focus on them, we need to focus on other things, and that's not true, and that hurts the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Actually, if I can go back, let me go back to this. I also wanted to talk about I found some interesting Pacific Islanders because I think we have a larger Pacific Islander community here, specific at Adams State. One thing that was very interesting was that while Pacific Islanders were assumed to be doing as well academically, and they were sort of given that same bias, they were found to have much more bias against Pacific Islanders when it came to careers and when it came to grad school. So once they were past their bachelor's, they were assumed to be in that sort of same academic level of other Asian Americans, and they were, but they face more discrimination when it comes to the workforce. And Asian Americans do face, once they're out of college, it's called the bamboo ceiling, where they are less likely to be promoted, they are less likely to be given leadership opportunities, they do face strong racial bias in the workforce, even though we're assuming, but they're doing so well academically. And so they're not having that career counseling, continuing education counseling, because you're assuming they're doing so well, but they go on to face bias. And when it comes more specifically to issues in the Valley, a big thing I really hear is understanding the complex history of AAPI racism and discrimination in the Valley. While Colorado was lucky that Japanese families were not sent to the internment camps because of Governor Carr at the time, what happened is that the camp, which was contracted by the government, it was a private company, bought the farms of poor Mexican families, chased them out, forced Japanese Americans to work on farms or leased them out. And what happened after the internment camps ended was, and you see that in the newspapers, I think Denver Post was the most heinous, was a reporting that Asian Americans were trying to take over Mexican jobs, and it led to a lot of racial tensions in the Valley. It led to families being chased out. And that is our history that I think a lot of people don't talk about, a lot of people don't acknowledge, and that there were people, I spoke to the relatives of a lot of the Japanese families who felt that that kind of sentiment towards Japanese Americans that spread to Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in general carried on even as they grew up, even till today, in the experiences I've had. That sentiment still lies within the community. So understanding that is really one of the best ways we can start to support our Asian American and Pacific Islander community here at Adams State. Number two is proactive and additional support for those with a lack of community, because it's like I mentioned earlier, when you're experiencing this all alone, not only are you having the burden of the experience, you're having the burden of being alone. And it's important for us to make sure we're educated and knowledge and proactive for our students about what they're facing, especially when they don't have representation or a community to go back to and say, but you, and because they don't have that feeling of you see what I see. So we have to be proactive in that sense. And number three, check against anti-AAPI language and attitudes in your classrooms and on campus. Because it's not, a lot of students felt that it wasn't really taken as seriously as other slurs against other racial groups, comments against other, they felt it wasn't taken as seriously by the community. And it's important that we do that. So I want to end just kind of with an open question. What can you do better for the AAPI community on campus? Anyone want to volunteer? Oh, I like that. Thank you. Thank you for speaking. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, here's a different one. What's something you took away from my presentation that you feel you can take away? Thank you. Anyone else?
No, it's okay. I think understanding the complex history, I think that was a great way to say it, the complex history of the Valley remiss in doing that. But yeah, I think that's a great way to start also in celebrating the tapestry, if you will, of cultures that have existed here where we live.
Thank you.
I think also we realize that AAPI and H, that whole category is so diverse within itself. Like you have your AA, PI, and H, all different categories, all different cultures, and really distinctive cultures. And I think this made me realize that researching all the variations of what those cultures have, because they're all very different from like Filipino culture to PI culture to Indian culture, all very different to Japanese. You're stereotypical, you think of Asian, you think of Chinese, Japanese, but they're all part of the rainbow team. So I think a reminder that yes, we group them all in 1 month and we group them all in like a thing, but there's a vast culture differences there.
Absolutely. I remember, I would have loved to see that with my teachers. I remember when I was in middle school, we were doing a play and there were Chinese characters. And in the play they speak Chinese. And our theater director really wanted us to have cue cards, that the actors would speak in Chinese, we'd have cue cards in English. And she asked me, "You speak Chinese, right?" Right? Even though I'm not Chinese, I don't speak any Chinese, but we just really assume it's all the same, right? All Asian. Alrighty, well, thank you for your participation. I did want to do, as Dr. Flo also brought up, as Dr. Flo also kind of mentioned, if you liked my presentation and you want to have kind of a more in-depth discussion about the Asian American experience, and my idea was to do this for each of the different heritage months, to pick a book, we read it, we have a discussion afterwards. So I'll be leading the discussion for Asian American Month, and we'll be reading Minor Feelings and Asian American Reckoning. And it's a beautiful book. It really gets deep about how isolating the Asian American experience can be here in America. The book discussion is on May 20th in the STEM Center. And if you have any questions, you can email me. Thank you.
All right, Grizzlies, give Nico one more hand of applause. Thank you, Nico. That was insightful. That was amazing. Grizzlies, let's continue to celebrate our beautiful communities. Let's continue to be in unity. Please, please, please grab a book if you're gonna read it and be part of the discussion. Again, thank you all so much for being here. This wraps up our Kindred Spirits. Thank you to everyone who has been proactive and taking part in these lunch and learns, basically. Again, thank you so much. Go Grizzlies, and we love you. So grab a book in nice, orderly fashion. Gracias, Marie.